My name's Jim Killick. I am the sales manager here at Edina, part of the information services group at Edinburgh University. My role is to promote access to Elm.
I'm Andrew Sales. I'm the technical lead on Elm.
Elm is an innovation platform that provides secure and safe access to large language models for use specifically in the education sector. It's developed here by the team at Edina, with the higher education sector at its heart, and it is being used by over 15,000 students at the minute in Edinburgh and plans to offer it out wider to the education sector across the country. The senior leadership team here at Edinburgh had a number of different concerns that arose following the explosion of generative AI a few years ago. There were major concerns around security, there was concerns around access, around sustainability, and around the number of different products that were available out there that various different people across the university estate were finding their own access to and were starting to use. So senior leadership came to Edina. Edina have 30 years experience of building web-based platforms for the education sector, and we got to work crafting a version of generative AI access that was fit for the sector and that addressed the key concerns of the senior leadership team.
Security was an important consideration because we wanted to make sure the data that our users entered was owned by the university and not by the AI company that we're sending the information to. So our agreement with OpenAI uses what's called a zero data retention agreement, so that they don't log any data that we're sent to them and they don't use it in the model training. We wanted to make sure that any research data or any private data that was used in the system was protected and secure so that other parties couldn't get access to it. To protect the IP and the data that's inside Elm, it's very similar to how any other web application would protect this sort of data. So we use encryption, firewalls where appropriate. The main difference and main consideration is that because some data has to be sent externally, we have to make sure that we only send exactly the right amount of data, no extra extraneous information, and to also have an agreement with the people we're sending the data to, that they don't log or use the data for any purposes that we don't wish them to use it for. Yes, I myself use Elm, generally for programming questions. So occasionally we've used it to help debug some problems or to adjust some fiddly code that we need to use inside Elm. So yes, it does get used to write itself. If we are using any AI-generated code, there's always a human in the loop. The system is never allowed direct access to any code. There's always a person that's reading the code that it generates and then modifying what gets written into the actual source code. At the moment, I can't see how we would never have a human in the loop. The kind of code that LLMs generate isn't really the same as what a human would do, so you have to be very conscious of security problems and especially subtle issues that are hard to spot when reading code. In the early days of Elm, it was actually two projects, one to augment the Ask Ed help system and one as a general chat AI platform for the university. We started out with a limited rollout to a few schools of the university and then only select staff and some students to test it out with those before moving on to open it up to the rest of the university. Most of the computationally intensive work is done by OpenAI and not at the university, so the scaling and the technical challenges of that are very similar to our existing web applications. In terms of the technical talent required to build Elm, because OpenAI mostly use industry standard protocols, we didn't really need to recruit any AI specialists to work on this platform. All the difficult AI work is handled by the AI providers. At the start of the project, OpenAI was really the only viable AI provider. They had by far the best models available. So Elm chose to use that. In addition, they also supported the zero data retention agreement that we required, so that they wouldn't use any data that we passed to them for training or logging. At this point, there are now other competitors potentially to OpenAI, so it would be a future consideration whether we add any other providers. Elm has recently started supporting local AI models as well that are hosted entirely in the University of Edinburgh. This gives us a useful advantage in that all the data is completely stored within the University of Edinburgh, and that allows us to use potentially data that OpenAI don't want us sending to them, for example, clinical data. We're currently unable to do any research or any work involving clinical data in Elm when it's using OpenAI's models. But if we use our own local models, then we have that ability to do that. We looked at a few other models when we started to deploy our own local model. Llama was clearly advantageous because of the license and because of the quality of the model. It's quite comparable to GPT-4o, which is one of OpenAI's main models. So it's very close in quality to that. And also the size of the model means it doesn't need too much hardware compared to some other models like DeepSeek. You can need a lot of hardware. So it's a good compromise between quality and cost.
Adina has been developing web-based subscription portals for nearly 30 years now. Part of what is baked into our infrastructure is the understanding of regulatory and legal framework that aligns to the products in which we work. It is no different for Elm. We've done that from day one, and we will continue to do that as regulation changes. We stay on top of the key sector regulation that exists currently, but we also look further afield to the wider AI regulation that's produced by the UK, by the EU, and even across the world as well. Specific to Elm, we have established an Elm steering group that's there to meet regularly to address operational risks and look at reputational risks at the same time. We rely on the infrastructure at Edinburgh University to support us as well. Teams like data protection, like legal services and information compliances all play their part to make sure that we address operational concerns and risk management right throughout the development of Elm.
The university's information services group has an AI ethics board that Elm reports into. So when we develop features or make adjustments that impact user data or any ethical concerns, we make sure that these features are brought to this board first before we implement and develop them.
Given how new and evolving generative AI is, it was crucial that we are able to gather the thoughts and insight and input from stakeholders right across the university estate. We do that in a number of different ways. We have a always-on feedback portal where people can share their thoughts and their ideas about how they're using Elm, what additional features they'd like to see, what concerns they have, all that kind of good information. We also have a really robust training and workshop program, so training is available from day one from anyone using Elm, which gives them guidance and steering as to how best to use AI and how to navigate this new tool. As part of that training process, there are opportunities to feedback.
There's a lot of concern about the use of power and water that large language models consume. And recently we've started looking into hosting our own large language models on university hardware. This gives us more control over what kind of power generation and cooling systems are used in the management of these servers. Additionally, it also gives us the ability to use more focused but smaller language models that are used for a specific purpose. So if a user's query doesn't necessarily need a larger model, it can use a smaller model which uses less power and less resources.
Equity of access is the fundamental first step in understanding the true power of generative AI. Elm is an innovation platform, and in order to innovate, the most number of people have to have access to the tools so that we can really understand what good quality innovation looks like. Until you provide that equitable access, you're always only getting slight insights into what it can do. But once you provide it to the whole estate, that's when the doors fling open and innovation can truly happen. Being an early adopter of generative AI here at Edinburgh has been fundamental in how we are able to train and coach and develop this product, specifically when we start to take it out to other institutions across the country. We have developed a series of AI governance and guidance and training programs and workshops that are now tailorable and transferable to other educational and research institutions across the country. And what we're finding is that insight that we have garnered over our couple of years of using Elm already means that we're in an incredibly advanced position compared to a lot of our other peers who are really desperate to learn more about this important space and understand how they can use it, how they can harness it, how they can start to innovate on top of it. And with Edinburgh being able to provide that insight and that support and that hand-holding has been a really important element of what we do here at Adina.